fairly young. I started by playing out at St Albans in the under-15s. I think my first couple of games I was started in the forward pocket. I remember very vividly getting told that you stand 2 yards from the point post and don't you move, and when they kick for goal I'll probably miss you. You're supposed to get it now and kick a goal. So that's where I started, and I can remember after 1 or 2 games I actually did kick a goal. I was quite proud of the fact that I'd got a goal and expected to read it in the paper on the Monday. When I get the paper on the Monday, I wasn't there. It was only 3 years later I found out that the reason I wasn't there is I was never ever registered. The club would have had to pay a registration fee, so that never ever took place. But I played under 15 football for 4 years. Then from there I graduated into the under 18 side. Played probably 4 or 5 games in under 18, and then the coach of the day was sort of insisting that if you're going to play football in that comp, we were going to have to all train. As a result of that policy, I was working in Melbourne. I got squeezed out, and I guess I got invited from there to actually go and train with the senior side. And I went from not getting a game into the senior side, where I played for a couple of years, and then in 1968, Stormers were in the Woolworth competition at that stage. We were actually premiers that year. Actually, we played on this ground and beat a club called Drysdale. I think they'd been undefeated for the year. Managed to strike them on a nice windy day, and we ended up successful by just a few points. From there, the next year I actually came across here to Geelong West and joined Geelong West. Played here for probably 7 years, and in 1976 I moved from being in this area to Ballarat to work, which meant continuing on here wasn't going to be an option. I was approached by Ron Tenabell, who was coach at Drysdale at the time. He came out to my house and wanted to know whether I was interested in playing down at Drysdale for the rest of that year. We had a discussion, and I think it was left on the basis that I wouldn't be able to go to training, and that probably wouldn't be right and wouldn't be accepted by the people down there. I got a phone call a couple of days later actually. He said that it had been discussed with the players, a number of which I did know for other sports, and that I was welcome. So I did go down and play. Played enough games in that year to qualify for the finals, and the club went on and won a flag that year in '76. Then the next year I played the whole year with them, and again in the final they were successful by a few points against a club that was probably considerably better. It had been all year, but again playing in inclement conditions, we finished up with a slightly higher score at the end of the day, so walked away with the chocolates. So at the end of '77, that was really the end of my playing career, and I moved on to other things. When I came across to this club, I was primarily playing around the centre of the field and forward, and that's how I started here. But towards the end of the first stint in the first division, I found myself in the back line, and then when we went back in the second division and Bill Goodwin came across, he said to me he thought I was going to be a back flanker, so really what he thought was what you became. So I think most people would probably see myself as someone that would take on the role of probably trying always initially to shut your opponent out of the game, and from there there was a clear expectation that you would also be a significant contributor in terms of how you got the ball forward. So I would have thought that people would probably see me a little bit as a bit dour in some respect, but I think that I was well aware of my capabilities. I wasn't a really good overhead mark, so being in defence again was to make sure your opponent didn't get it. So often that was a spoil onto the ground with an attempt to recover and get control of the ball and be able to move it forward as quickly as we could. And I think, just not myself, I think the whole defence during that period of the first division, I think we were probably all quite capable skill-wise and capable kicks in terms of if you do win the ball, just not to give it back, but in fact to get it down the ground to someone who's able to use it in attack. So returning to a little bit more detail on my time over here at Geelong West, The reason I came across has got a little bit of a story behind it. I was at the Gordon Institute at the time doing engineering, and I had my football gear in class, and the guy I was alongside ended up getting paired off with to do practical engineering work that afternoon, and we got talking about football. He said he played over at Geelong West. I said I played at St Albans and we're going to training, and he said, "Oh, you knew we won the flag last year, we've turned over a lot of players, you should come over and have a run." I said, "I'm really interested." Cut a long story short, he convinced me that I should get in the car with him after that class finished and come across here, which I did. So we came across, got changed and get out on the ground, and I found out that in fact the person who invited me across was Ron Tenable, who was coach. So I went through a couple of weeks of training here, did what was done in those days, which was playing a practice match, survived that experience, and then it was time to go and get a clearance from St Albans. Match permits were around in those days. They wouldn't give me match permits, wouldn't give me a clearance. So there was a second visit, went across with the secretary of the club, fronted their committee, gave the reasons, got asked to leave like you did in those days outside in the cold, along with the fellow that went with me. About 15 minutes later they called him in. He'd been gone for quite a long while and came back out and said, "Well, you didn't cost us too much." And to this day I don't know whether it was true or not. He said it cost him 2 new footballs and half a dozen seasons tickets, so I don't know whether that was true or not, but that was how I got away from St Albans and came across here. So we came across in the 69 season, as I said earlier, which Ron Tenable was coach. I think the primary job that he'd been charged with was to make sure that the club stayed in First Division that year. They'd lost a lot of players from the successful side the year before. I think we were probably out-muscled, and probably the skill level we were probably a little bit behind the comp for most of the year, but succeeded in winning enough games to stay in First Division. So under anyone's sort of review of that, I think Ron had done his job. Played a whole year, and he did under a fair bit of duress with a bunged up knee, but he was really the only quality ruckman the club had, so he turned up week after week. Over the summer period then, the club moved and recruited Ian Bryant, who'd been a top-line footballer with Footscray. He came across, again, playing coach. Some additional players come and joined the club, notwithstanding everyone's best efforts. I think we probably only won 4 games again that following year, but again that was enough to survive in First Division. Further recruiting over the summer period, a real determination to do better in the following year, which we're now I think up to 71. Got a couple of wins on the board earlier this season, but as the year went on we started to struggle, and I think we got to 2 games to go before the end of the season, and we had 4 wins on the board, and the other club that was in line for relegation stuck up from 3 wins to 4 wins, so there was 2 clubs with 2 rounds to go, both on 4 wins, and we had a very similar percentage. So there was a bit of a crisis meeting almost from the club officials with the players, stressing how important it was that we did succeed and stay in First Division. We probably would have needed to win 1 game very, very well, and be very close in the other, but if we could win both, it would almost certainly secure a position in First Division. History will show that we won our first game, and so did the other team, and we took on a side that was probably considerably better than ourselves in the last game of the year, and we got across the line, which we were all elated about, only to find that the other club had also been successful, and been successful in winning by quite an amount, notwithstanding it was a club higher up the ladder. And I think we were relegated with a percentage, 6 wins out of 18 games and a percentage of I think almost 88, but we were relegated as a result of that from First Division. And I think I'll always recall sort of the devastation and the probably couple of hours post that game and finding out that we weren't going on. So unbeknownst to I think everyone at the time, that was probably the end of one era and actually the start of a new one, where the club went out and identified that they wanted someone around the club with a different profile, someone with a Geelong profile, and it was announced that Bill Goggin was going to come across and be a playing coach here. That was at a time when he was probably a household name and almost in many people's eyes an idol around Geelong. And clearly with his name and a real drive from the people who were on committee at that stage, they set about a fairly significant recruiting process. So most of this had gone on, and I was sort of, like everyone, following in the papers. It really wasn't happening at the club here in the off-season. And I, like a number of other people, then got a phone call from the secretary at the time to come across and have a chat about what I was going to do in the future. So I came across here with a bit of apprehension, thinking, here we go, this is the start of many people being cleaned out of the club, because there was always going to be a requirement to refresh. Somewhat surprised, I was met by the then Vice President and Secretary and told that I was one of the people that had been identified that should continue on, and I was offered a contract. It was pretty good, offered a contract. So I got told to take that home and read it, which I did. The basic issue that in the contract that was different to previous was that there'd be a requirement to make yourself available for training. I think it was from the 30th of October right through, and you were pretty much required to do that and be available for the club's requirements to the 30th of September. Sort of thought about this. I thought, I've got other sports in my life, I've got to get more of an interest in other things. So I rang the fellow that was the Vice President at the time and spoke to him and said, look, I don't think I can sign this contract. I actually want to continue on with my summer sport. And he said, Billy won't like that. And I said, well, can I meet him? And he said, Billy won't like that. But what came out of that was I did end up with a meeting with himself and Bill about a week's later, and went through the issue that I was involved in competition work with the fire brigade, and I was genuinely interested in continuing with that. And I said, not only that, there's championships in Western Australia next year, which is going to happen over the Easter period, which will lead into the start of the season. I didn't raise the fact that I knew that his brother was heavily involved in that. At that stage, he ran with a side called Kahuna. So he asked me all about his fire brigade running, which he must have known that I knew about his brother. He said, well, are you really determined to do that? I said, well, yes, I am. And he said, in that case, if you go to Western Australia, I'll get you somewhere to train. So I had to go and train with West Perth while I was over there, and got a real sort of stern lecture about if you turn up and you're not fit, there's no game here for you and there's no place in the club. So that all took place, and when I returned, I managed to come back and join the side, and of course 72 was the year that the club went through and became champions. There's probably two things that stand out in my mind about that year now, reflecting on it. One is the heat that Bill took, having come out of the league as still a really quality player, and probably took a lot of treatment during the year. The other thing that stands out vividly is our ongoing competition with Caulfield and ourselves. And there was really only 4 sides that cleared out during the year, but Caulfield now, better than probably the rest of the competition, was Caulfield and ourselves. I think we met here at Western Oval. Was the Sunday of Queen's birthday weekend, I know that. We were both undefeated, I think 7 or 8 wins each. And that was the first time I'd seen a really, really large crowd here at Geelong West. We won by, I'm not sure the score, but it was less than a goal, and probably fortunate to win the game, which is as close as that. We met them again later in the year up at their ground, and I think we won by a more significant margin, 3 or 4 goals. Then we met again in the second semi-final, and I think people have probably told you the story that we'd been in front most of the day, but right towards the end of the game we'd slipped a couple of points behind, and just prior to the siren sounding, Alex Angelkovic took a mark, probably a distance that you couldn't really throw the ball through. But in fact, in Alex's case, that he decided to kick the ground as well as the ball and somehow just dribbled over the brick that was there. And whilst the story's been embellished over the years, it was a frightful sight at the time. But again, that was 3 out of 3 over Caulfield. And then in the grand final, I think we were probably going on quite comfortably at half time, probably even at 3/4 time. I would have thought that most people playing that day would have believed that we were going to go on and win the game comfortably. But to their credit, they just persisted, and it got down to the last part of the game. I can still remember the time clock, about 25 minutes passed, and I think there was a goal in it, and it got to 30 minutes, and there'd been countless sort of ball-ups and throw-ins on their half-forward flank, which was an area that I was playing in the back flank at that time. And you looked up and then it was 31 minutes, and then it was 32 minutes, and they'd get near their goal, they'd get forced back, and finally, when the game was over and the siren went, that period was one of just, I don't think it was elation, I think it was just pure relief that we'd been successful. So the great joy out of that was almost atonement for what had happened. There was only a handful of us that were still around from the era that we were sort of pushed back down to second division to be there and assist the club to get back into first division. It was quite a special time. So when we returned to first division, again there was an injection of new personnel. Quite a successful year in many ways, because the club just didn't go up and survive. It went up and was quite competitive, and maybe to some extent was unlucky not to make finals that year. During the finals there were things called a Lightning Premiership. The club participated in that and won that, and I think probably proved to a number of the players that well, we probably should be on the big stage, which is about to happen immediately after we finished. And indeed in the period of 74, that's really what happened. The club, with the addition of even further new blood, was able to force themselves from being a good solid side, I think, to almost starting to enter the elite of the VFA. We got into the finals comfortably that year, notwithstanding the fact that we did get eliminated in the preliminary final, knocked over by Oakley. And the following year was 75, and I think a number of people have spoken about 1975 and just how important it was for the club, and the absolute focus from probably 5 or 6 games into the season that the talent had been assembled. It had all the support it needed by everyone within the club, and it ultimately went through and was successful on the big stage at the end of the year, which again was a great thing for probably just not the club, but there was a lot of other people that were supporting Geelong West Football Club at that time. It wasn't just the issue of sort of people following them with television. I think the local print media was on board and supported with good articles right through the year. And it was a period where the local radio was also broadcasting all our games. Brian Brushfield and his sidekick then was Harry Stapleton. I worked in Melbourne, so there was a lot of people who would talk to you at work about the fact that they mightn't have watched on television, but they'd actually been listening on the radio. So it generated a lot of interest around that time. So it was special for not just the club, but everyone surrounding the club as well. One of the things I would like to mention is the amount of work that was done behind the scenes that enabled the club to be successful during the latter period that I was here. I was fortunate enough to be on the General Committee as a player rep for a year or so during that period, but a lot of kudos is given to a handful of people, and particularly the coach and the players, and obviously they're the only ones that can get it done on the field, but the people that were president, secretary on the committee, people that were working the ladies' canteen, those people cleared the way for everyone else to enjoy that environment. And some of the joyful things about being in the club, and you remember the club, are the personalities, and that's special. And I really don't think that in a successful period like that people do take time to reflect on often how much work's been put in by how many, whether it's sort of manning a gate, or whether it's the trainers giving papers run down, the doctors that would provide you with any medical attention you wanted. The support around the club during that period was just outstanding, and there was nothing that couldn't be done to ensure that the people that were out there representing the club couldn't bring home success. So that's one of the things I'll always remember.
You've given your heart to get here, and your soul to get it right. You can take 'em boots and all, but it's sure gonna take a fight. When you spend all week getting to your peak, you're gonna have your say. You bet. On Sunday, it's the BFA. It's Sunday, you're gonna make your play for the BFA. Today you're gonna fly. It's Sunday for the BFA. It's Sunday.